You've probably heard the term PTSD before, right? But what does it actually mean to live with it? In this explainer, we're going to go beyond the letters to really understand what post-traumatic stress disorder is, how it shows up, and most importantly, the path toward healing.
This question, well, it gets right to the very heart of PTSD. A good way to think about it is like a smoke alarm that's still blaring, loud and clear, long after the fire's been put out. For someone with PTSD, their brain's natural alarm system, the one that's supposed to protect them, it gets stuck in the on position, even when the danger is long gone. So what's the clinical definition? PTSD is a mental health condition that can pop up after a traumatic event. But the key thing to remember isn't the event itself, it's the aftermath. It's when those really upsetting thoughts and memories just don't go away, and they start getting in the way of everyday life, long after the person is actually safe.
And this isn't some rare thing. In the United States alone, we're talking about roughly 12 million adults living with PTSD in any given year. That is millions of people, our neighbors, our coworkers, our family members, who might be carrying this heavy, invisible weight.
Okay, so to really truly understand PTSD, we have to look at what it feels like from the inside. Let's break down the common signs and symptoms.
While the symptoms can feel totally chaotic and overwhelming, they can generally be sorted into 4 distinct categories. Thinking about them this way really helps us see how one single traumatic event can send ripples out to affect every single part of a person's life. So, let's dive in.
The first category is intrusion. And yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Unwanted memories, nightmares, or flashbacks that just invade a person's mind without warning. And a flashback isn't just a bad memory. It's this incredibly powerful sensory experience where it feels like the trauma is happening all over again, right here, right now.
The second category is avoidance. Now, to cope with all those intrusive thoughts, a person might try to avoid anything and everything that reminds them of the trauma. This could mean avoiding certain places or people, or just flat out refusing to talk about what happened. It's a defense mechanism that makes sense, but unfortunately, it can lead to feeling really isolated.
Third, we have negative changes in mood and thinking. You see, trauma can kind of poison how a person sees themselves and the world around them. They might get overwhelmed with feelings of guilt or shame, feel emotionally numb and disconnected from other people, or just completely lose interest in things they used to love to do. And the fourth category is arousal and reactivity. This is when the body's fight or flight response gets stuck in overdrive. It's like living in a constant state of high alert, being super easily startled, having angry outbursts, or really struggling to sleep. It is just mentally and physically exhausting.
It's also really crucial to know that PTSD can look very different in children. Since they often can't put their trauma into words, it might come out in their behavior, like reenacting the scary event through play, becoming super clingy, or even going backward on milestones like bedwetting. Now that we've covered the symptoms, let's dig into the roots of PTSD. What kinds of events can cause it, and what factors might make someone a bit more vulnerable to developing it?
When we hear the word trauma, a lot of people's minds jump straight to military combat, but the reality is so much broader than that. As you can see, PTSD can be triggered by a whole range of events, from car accidents and natural disasters to assault, or even getting a severe medical diagnosis. The common thread in all of these is an experience of intense fear, helplessness, or horror.
But here's the thing, not everyone who goes through a trauma develops PTSD. So what makes the difference? Well, there's no single answer, but some risk factors can include how severe the trauma was, a past history of mental health challenges, and, this one's huge, a lack of strong social support after the event happens. This next section is so important because it's all about hope. While PTSD can be completely life-altering, it is absolutely treatable. Let's turn to the path forward and look at the effective ways people can find help and really begin to heal.
So, when is it time to get some help? Look, it is totally normal to feel distressed and out of sorts after a traumatic event. But if the symptoms we've been talking about are still hanging around after a month and are seriously getting in the way of your work, your relationships, or just your daily life, that is a clear sign that it's time to reach out to a professional.
Effective treatment is usually a combination of these 3 approaches. Psychotherapy, or talk therapy, is really the cornerstone. Medication can be used to help manage underlying symptoms like anxiety or depression, which makes it easier to do the work in therapy. And self-help strategies, well, they provide essential tools for coping day to day.
2 of the most effective types of therapy are CPT and PE. Cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, helps a person challenge and reframe the unhelpful ways of thinking that can get stuck in your head after a trauma. Then there's prolonged exposure therapy, or PE. It involves gradually and safely confronting the thoughts and situations that you've been avoiding, which helps teach the brain that it doesn't need to be afraid anymore.
Now, when it comes to medication, doctors often prescribe antidepressants called SSRIs or SNRIs. These aren't happy pills or anything like that. They work by helping to regulate the brain chemicals that are involved in mood and stress. By just turning down the volume on symptoms like severe anxiety, medications like the ones you see here can clear the way for therapy to be even more effective.
Finally, recovery isn't just about what happens in a professional's office. The day-to-day journey is just as important. So let's look at the coping strategies and support systems that can empower someone to reclaim their life from trauma.
This slide really shows the active role a person plays in their own healing journey. It's not just about what happens in a therapist's office. Grounding techniques, physical exercise, and just connecting with trusted friends, these are all incredibly powerful tools. It's about building a personal toolkit for managing symptoms and moving forward.
This is such a critical point about recovery. I mean, the goal isn't to forget what happened. That's just not possible. The goal is to heal around the memory. It's about lessening its emotional power until it's no longer the one in the driver's seat of your life.
So what does the long-term outlook really look like? Well, the data's pretty clear. For most people, treatment is very effective at reducing symptoms. But healing isn't always a straight line. As you can see, recovery is a journey. For some, symptoms might fade pretty quickly, while for others, managing them is a longer-term process. The key takeaway is that improvement is always possible.
And please remember this. You are not alone and help is available. If you or someone you know is in crisis, you can call or text 988 in the U.S. at any time to connect with a trained crisis counselor. That number again is 988.
We'll leave you with this question to think about. Because, understanding PTSD is just the first step. The next is to ask how we can all help create a world where it's safe to heal. How can we be better friends, better colleagues, and better community members to those carrying the invisible weight of trauma? Thanks for joining us.